Hi, Vincent.
Hi, give me 1 second.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I guess I'm okay.
What's that mean?
Thriving, I suppose.
Why did you choose to come on here rather than Spaces? You don't want to be interrupted?
No, I don't want to be interrupted because I do feel I have a number of things I want to say. And what was Sigma talking about last night? Something about generating energy and matter. What was
Yeah,
it?
I was trying to get him to he's very shifty in the way that he presents himself. It's almost like you can't say anything. Anything that you say to him, he like, what's awareness, what's consciousness? I don't know what consciousness is because I don't know what unconsciousness is. Like, these types of like discussions that get you nowhere, and it was just basically about the power of awareness and being aware of something and how it affects you. And he kind of said your awareness counts, but not really. Or what he really said is that you're always aware. Even so, I gave him like how if you're not aware there's a virus in your body, how do you get sick from it if you're not even aware of it? And he's like, well, you are aware of it, you just don't know you're aware of it. Um,
Yeah, he seems to enjoy presenting unprovable theories for the fun of, displaying his intellect, I suppose. I mean, but it's just a waste of time. There's so many more important things to talk about, in my view. It's like, why present an unprovable theory that has no utility?
Well, it's not. It's unfalsifiable too. It's just that. So his theory is that we're always aware of everything. So you really are aware. Let's say that there was radioactive poisoning in a house, and you don't know that. He says that you actually are aware of it on some level, which I can't prove.
Yeah, but
Or
he's yes. So he's saying yes and no, and it's basically unprovable because there is no objective measure of really knowing that, really knowing of this thing. And he's saying you are knowing, you know and don't know about it at the same time. So, well, we'll never, get any sense out of him.
no, it's just I'm trying to catch him because once you get them, I've learned that Ludendorff woman really helped me. You have to narrow it down to miracles. Does your philosophy lead you to believe in miracles? And he didn't want to say miracles. He said the fact that the universe existing is a miracle and blah, 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 blah. And then when I said, when the laws of space time, can they be bent? Oh, well, I take objection with that word bent. They're not being bent. Okay, fine, change. Well, I take objection with that word. Not able to ever get to, our, you have to be very precise in the way you say all these things to him, or he just won't answer your question and will bring up problems about the question you asked. He starts bringing up problems about the question.
So, I mean, what do you think is his motivation to present these ideas?
I don't know. He's trying. I don't know what. I think he wants. He says we're world builders. I think he's wanting to be one of these people that like humans are partners in the creation, and so therefore we could probably do. Well, I want to know what. Yeah, what can you do with his information? What can I do with what you're telling me?
Yeah, because there is no practical utility to pointlessly speculating on something that cannot be falsified, right?
Yes.
And yeah, and particularly when there's so many more important things to be talking about, in my view, such
Yes.
as such as religion and politics. But then the thing is, we already know he doesn't believe in God. So I guess his view of life would be, well, I'm just going to have fun and enjoy myself and show off my intellect by proposing these theories that lead nowhere but, annoy people and show that I am cleverer than the people I annoy.
I'm just trying to narrow him down to say that, yes, I believe in miracles, but he won't say it. He keeps dodging that question and what's miracles, and then, getting upset whenever you try to define miracle and no word works. And I don't like this. You know what I hate? When people are like, oh, but you don't know anything. You can't know anything. It's all when you can't even know gravity exists. I hate that type of shit. You talk to these white straight men and they like to get into areas of philosophy where language no longer works, where things no longer have meaning, where you can no longer know for certain.
But the thing is, if you're going to talk about miracles, then I guess you are indirectly talking about God, aren't you?
Well, I don't think he would say that, because he would say that you are the person or partner with the miracle, I think, rather than God doing it, that your own brain is part of this exercise.
I don't quite understand, but you either believe, a miracle is something performed by God or his agent, right? Isn't that what it really means? And I suppose, a miracle has the purpose of affirming the existence of God. But I know that Muslims get a little confused about it, because I've heard Muslims say that Muhammad was a successful political and religious and military leader without performing a single miracle. And then some of them would say, oh, but the Quran is a miracle. So obviously the status of miracle is not clear in the minds of Muslims either.
Well, I'm talking about the bending of space-time. I'm talking about breaking the physical laws of the universe is what I'm talking about. And
did you mean warp speed? Or
no,
exceeding the speed of light?
making something fly up in the air, or something that breaks space-time, something that breaks the laws of physics that could not possibly happen, levitation of objects and stuff like that.
Right. So, if it's not a miracle, then it's a magic trick or a piece of technology.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that some people's ideology leads them to believe that miracles are possible.
Well, if you do believe in God, then I guess you're logically obliged to believe in miracles, aren't you?
No.
No?
Well, Matilda Ludendorff believed in God, but she didn't believe in miracles.
Well, she obviously didn't believe in the Abrahamic God, and you're saying that her God is what, a pantheistic God?
I don't know. It's imminent, though she believes God is outside space-time too, but she says don't worry about that part of God, because you cannot know that part of God. She said focus on the imminent part of God. So what do you think is the purpose of her deity? I don't know. I have to, it's complicated. I have to read further, but I know that, I don't know.
I think she's just trying to better the Abrahamic God. Isn't that what she's trying to do? If you look at it, psychologically anyway.
I don't know if she was trying to make it better. It was different.
She was obviously rejecting, the Christianity that, Germans were supposed to believe in. So I guess she has to, create a new deity, and that was her attempt.
Yes, and just because like, just because I haven't figured her all out yet doesn't mean that she's wrong.
Well, it hasn't caught on really, but I mean, the teleological approach to things will help you work out, what the thing is after you've worked out what it's for. So, I mean, we know that she was a Nazi, and
Not
the
really,
Nazis,
not really. She was. They didn't like her. They didn't like her at all. The Nazis hated her.
because she was too anti-Semitic. That seems to be what you said last time.
Well, she was probably more radically anti-Semitic than they were, and also they didn't like her just inventing this new religion outside of Nazism for the German people.
But the Nazis were also trying to invent a new religion, weren't they? There was the Thule Society and whatnot.
Well, they had positive Christianity they were trying to create.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hitler would have been quite cautious about inventing a new religion, because if he tried to do something like that, he would alienate all those, Christians who supported him.
Yeah.
I seem to remember that in Mein Kampf, he was identifying as Christian. So, I mean, in a way, her Ludendorff's intention, her purpose is obvious. I mean, she obviously didn't agree with the Abrahamic God. She didn't agree with Judaism. She didn't agree with any of the Abrahamic religions, and therefore she thought she would create one. And I mean, the purpose of pantheism, I would say, is its certainty, because it equates, the observable world with God. Because Spinoza was basically saying the universe is God, wasn't he?
I guess.
And this is considered heresy by Jews and Muslims, because they're saying, well, the problem is that if you equate all the observable universe with God, you will have to deal with difficult things like, well, not toilets and cesspits and unpleasant things, and then I guess the human intellect recoils at the idea of associating God with horrible things or dirty things, unclean things. So there is a conundrum there, and which I think the Abrahamic God neatly solves by saying, no, God created the universe and is separate from it. And to claim otherwise is to be guilty of idolatry, which is a mortal sin, for which you will be punished. So, it neatly deals with the problem.
Well, I don't know how she dealt with that, like God in the toilet and stuff like that, which to me is like, if God is all things, then yes, God, well, a toilet has utility, doesn't a toilet, the invention of the toilet, save us from, what's it called, those diseases where all the shit goes into the water system, and cholera and fecal matter in the water system and stuff like that, which people used to have a problem with before indoor plumbing. I mean, so even a toilet can be, a toilet has redeemable qualities.
Yes, because it's useful. But then you could also say, well, humans are useful. Mum and dad are useful. My son or daughter is useful to me. And then you're back in this conundrum of, you have to distinguish God from humanity, because, if he's, if he's part of humanity, if he's only an idea, right? So if he's only an idea, then he's, actually less powerful than the creator of that, the conceiver of the idea. Um, but then, the interesting thing about the world of ideas, and Plato talked about it, in his ideal forms, is that ideas exist independently of us. We can have an idea and then we can, die, but the idea lives on. But only if it is understood by others. And passed on, obviously, and in order to have it understood and passed on, somebody else apart from ourselves has to find it good and useful. But it does appear that the concept of the Abrahamic God is very useful. Or I guess he wouldn't be around. So, we're faced with the idea of thinking, actually, God exists and created the universe, or he was just an idea of, say, Abraham. And but anyway, he's useful.
Yes, deities can be useful, and yes, deities can be useful, but I don't know if the monotheistic Abrahamic God is universally useful. I think that it causes a lot of division in society, right? Because a lot of people don't want to do it. A lot of people have other ideas. They don't like the way it's framed. They can't believe the stories. These different kinds of things. So
But we'll never agree.
It comes with its own problem. So, you know what I mean? You don't want to just sit with a problem. You want to and you don't want something that people can't maintain. Like we said, atheism is spreading in Saudi Arabia. If you have these type of religions, people, they can't forever maintain their domain. Like they can, but as soon as, not forever, because there's too many people who don't want to do it.
Well, I mean, everything needs maintenance, right? There's household
polytheism
maintenance.
didn't. Polytheism, there were no revolts against polytheism in the ancient world. There were no large atheist movements being like, oh God, we got to get rid of the gods.
Well, because, it's just so low that, it didn't need maintaining, because it was just such a dumb thing to do that, people wanted to do it anyway. It's sort of like, I mean, you can't really make a deity out of, people wanting to eat or, wanting to drink. I suppose you could call it, making a god of our appetites or something like that. But then, it's the regulating of human appetites that again becomes part of politics and morality, because we all want to do a whole bunch of things, and the people around us might object to our behavior. So then we people demanding that there ought to be a law against this or that comes into play, and then the government has to address this issue of people not agreeing. And then, okay, so you make a law and then people disagree with it, and then they don't obey it, and then there's a revolution. I mean, I think this can happen even within idolatrous communities, right? Because I'm sure there are tribal wars amongst tribes who are idolaters.
Yeah, but not over the fact that they have a different god. I mean, it wasn't like they're not worshiping Astaroth, so we have to go and destroy their temples. It wasn't like that.
But all tribal wars, I imagine, would be fighting over resources and territory.
Yeah, that's different. That's different than a war in Europe over some little itty bitty aspect about God. I mean, they didn't do that. Pagans didn't. they didn't have 30 years wars to the point that everyone was starving to death and needed to resort to cannibalism because somebody disagreed with them ever so slightly on an interpretation. That didn't happen.
Well, the Wars of the Reformation was about politics because it was basically about whether kings should obey the Pope, and then they decided one by one that they didn't want to. I mean, we might think, oh, it's some stupid dogma of these Christians, but of course these dogma had political implications to do with territory and politics that may not have been explained properly or understood properly by many people even now. But I mean, it's like if we understand that politics is religion and the two are inseparable, then I think we would be in a better position to understand the role of religion. I mean, there are people who say, let's ban religion, but banning religion is also a political act. And then, and then, okay, imagine if somebody managed to ban, all the Abrahamic religions and including Hinduism and Buddhism. Of course, there would be opposition and there would be fighting, right? So there's actually no getting around the problem of politics. And therefore, politics must be about negotiation and getting people to agree to rules that they can all live under, and then excluding people who don't agree to the rules. That must have been how politics has always operated. Are you one of us or not? And if you're not, then we're going to treat you badly. Maybe we can put up with you being in our group, or we might have to kick you out. It depends, So I just don't see how we can get away from religion and politics. And I think Matilda Ludendorff was saying she could create a better God than the Abrahamic God, and you've confirmed that this God is pantheistic in nature, and
I'm not sure about that, Clara. Wait, I'm not sure it's pantheistic in nature. All I know is that it has an immanent component. That's all I know.
If it's immanent, then it means it is. Then she is saying that God is material.
There's a material component, yes, but it's not. God is outside the universe as well, so it's just. It's Allah, but Allah can enter space-time is the only difference.
Right. So she's trying to have it both ways, isn't she? Because I mean that's what it is. It's like either God is transcendent or immanent, and she's saying it's both, and presumably hoping that Germans wouldn't question that too much. But the point is, logically, we have to think, well, what's the last stop, right? So pantheists would say the last stop is the universe, because we're going to say that the universe was always there, so there was no need for God to create the universe. That would be their, logical argument.
I think she said God originated outside space-time, but when it created space-time, it was able to enter it. That's what I think she believes.
Okay, well, you'll have to check, but I mean, Christians have adopted a similar, having your cake and eating it. So on the one hand, Christians adopted the God of Israel because I guess he was so powerful and he created the world and he knows everything, blah, blah. And then they thought, we're going to take Jewish scripture and adopt it and give it a Gentile twist. And that presumably was, what Christianity was. And maybe they thought, hey, there's a bit of schism amongst the Jews. There's this Jesus person, and some Jews think he's the Messiah. Let's see what we can do about that. And I guess then they created Christianity. Which has been useful. I mean, if you call a religion of war and empire useful, and how could you not, since, the West is a global empire, as well as a political expression of values. Of liberal values.
Let's see. Hold on.
Well, I hope you'll. I don't think it's because you're dumb and you can't understand. I'm sure her language was expressed in the most complicated, incoherent way, and when people do that, they either don't understand the thing, or they want to be deliberately obscure. And it seems to me she wanted it, to have it both ways. But let me suggest to you why someone would want to create a religion that doesn't require faith. So, a pantheist like Spinoza would be saying, God is the universe. Ain't the universe beautiful? Look at the trees and the mountains and the sea and the sky and the birds and the bees. And then, you don't need this idea of something that may or may not be there, because then you have a concrete presence of this, material God that you worship. So you think, well, there's no need for us to, worry about whether God exists or not. He's here. We're on his world and blah blah. But then that also creates difficulties, because if people don't think that God is good, then they'll also reject him as the
Well, that's
ancient...
the problem, because the whole problem is that in your thing, God does not seem good. I'm sorry. I don't think if Allah is letting all these spiritual influences into my life to trick me when I'm a child and all this other kind of stuff, and I can't figure it out and all this other kind of stuff, and if I don't get it right, I go to hell. Like, that doesn't sound like a good God to me. Like, you put me in a different home away from you, taught me things, let me have spiritual experiences that tricked me, and like, I'm supposed to believe you're a good God? No, like, a good God would just be like, hey guys, here's my book. Like, this is what I want from you, and thank you. And just live your life according to what the obvious God wants. There's no obvious will of God. Everyone has 500 different opinions of what God wants. Even in Islam, even if you talk to 500 different Muslims, you would get 500 different interpretations of Islam. You would not get the same interpretation. Even if I went to his people, I could still be spiritually tricked. I could still get involved in Islam and get involved in a sect that, might not do it properly 100%, and I don't know that, and all this other kind of stuff. This does not sound like a good God to me.
Well, if you can create a better one, well, go ahead. Ludendorff tried, and it didn't make sense.
Well, it didn't make Claire. AI. It makes sense to AI, so it has to make sense. I mean, AI read it and read her book and was able to create a detailed message about it. It wasn't like it just said this is nonsense.
Well, you can't explain it.
Well,
even though you must have read it. I'm assuming you read it. Did you read it?
I read as much as I could get through, and then I couldn't read anymore. And then I read the summaries from AI, which I haven't fully gone through yet. So I don't want to say that. But what I'm saying is that, look, we didn't know what Vedanta was until I finally found out how to figure it out, right? And it's not that it doesn't make sense. I mean, maybe you don't believe in it, but it's not that it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because you found the thing that Vedantists are supposed to believe, which is teleportation, right?
Well,
that these gurus can magically disappear and reappear in another place. That was
Yes, but
they
their logic to getting there is sound. Like you can explain it. It's not like gobbledygook.
well, not really, because okay, the claiming it happens, but then we can think of Star Trek and the teleportation. So we can understand teleportation, but we don't really believe it happens, and therefore it's not scientific. I mean, that's the important thing. Now, the narrative of the Abrahamic God is, as we both agree, unfalsifiable. And we could say that there are lots of unfalsifiable ideas that aren't worth arguing about, such as Sigma's idea that you discussed last night. But I'm saying the Abrahamic God is clearly useful in that if you decide to use it on your people, then you have a very strong means of control. Like, well, we are God's people and we obey his laws, and well, we better obey his laws, and all of God's people will be conscientious about obedience to his laws, or they won't go to heaven. Some sort of reasoning of this nature is required, and well, and it's inevitable, right? Because if you want to use the system, this is how you would use it. And why would you want people to obey God's laws? My suggestion is that even absolute monarchs are fearful of revolution, and they don't want to be overthrown themselves if they were the usurpers, and they want people to think, oh, it's fair enough, and these laws are good, and because they're good and from a good source, we're going to obey them from generation to generation, and they're obviously fair enough. That would be, I guess, the reasoning, insofar as I can see it. That would be how people who believed in God would reason. Otherwise, they would suffer the same things that we now face, like, corrupt and incompetent rulers making up the rules as they go along, and making up so many rules because they keep having to make up rules to cover their mistakes, meaning telling lies to cover up their previous lies, until nobody believes anything they say anymore. So that would be the problem. I mean, if you tell too many lies, people will just stop believing in anything you say. But I mean, what I find is that clever people are very creative in coming up with reasons, as Sigma was in, proposing his idea, and he would no doubt be quite good at coming up with arguments to justify the validity of his idea. But clever people can tell lots of lies, and telling lies would be damaging and unconstructive, and we should be, at least be honest and logical about our arguments, so at least they make sense. So if we want to improve our government, I think we can we can all agree that things would be more peaceful if everybody obeyed the rules and thought that the rules were fair enough. They don't have to think it's perfect. They just have to think it's fair enough. And they're not going to rock the boat and cause trouble because they think it's fair enough, even though it's not perfect. I mean, that's a minimum standard, right? And I think that must have been the purpose of the no-hide laws, because they were framed in a way to invite general universal agreement, I would say.
Well, let's say how universal this agreement is. I mean,
You were the one who said the no-height laws were formulated after the inception of Christianity, or was I mistaken?
yeah, they're after Christianity.
Right. So it could be these rabbis thinking, well, we're going to get these Christians. We're going to give these 5 laws that decent people, whether Christian or not, are going to agree with. The positive commandment to have a court and legal system, dispensing justice, and not eating animals while they're still alive, forbidding murder, forbidding theft, forbidding sexual immorality. They're not going to be arguing about that. And finally, the kicker, which is idolatry and blasphemy. And it's like, yeah, but they stole our religion. And the first 2 commandments are the prohibition against idolatry and blasphemy. So really, if they're righteous Gentiles and want to be thought as righteous Gentiles, they will have to agree logically and necessarily. And we've got them. So they won the argument using the 7 no-height laws. And then they probably thought, we didn't say anything about usury, did we? So we can still lend them money and charge them interest. And they're not going to be raising any objections about usury because, they do like to borrow money from us. And we're the only one who, they can borrow money from, because they can't borrow money from those Muslims over there. It just sort of works so perfectly, this narrative. So maybe the no-height laws are not quite halal enough, it could be argued, because it didn't forbid usury. And obviously, we've got ourselves into a lot of trouble and debt over our desire to have things but not have the money to pay for them, but we just go to the money tree and shake it. And now we're over our heads in debt. And somebody recently said that, the American dollar is not the reserve currency of the world because it is the best currency of the world, but because it is backed by the might of the American empire. So that's why you have to keep going to war from time to time.
Well, on top of it, none of these people that follow this God seem to be very godly anyway.
Well, we can admire the system for what it is. We can say, but rules are made to be broken. Look at the people who break the rules. But the point is that once you have rules, you can identify the people who break it, and then you can work out causation by saying so-and-so broke those rules, or this empire broke those rules, and that nation and that tribe broke those rules, and bad stuff happened to them, and you think, oh, better not break those rules, or this country or that empire kept the rules, and look how well they're doing. The rules are there to kind of remind us which side of the road we should be on. I think it's a great system, whether you believe in God or not, because it's self-correcting. Obviously, a lot of people are just going to, be too stupid to even understand what we're discussing. But for those who care to understand and want to improve their government, the way forward is clear. And really, it is a question of space and resources. Yesterday we were talking about your birds, and obviously it would be fine to be a society finch if you have a kind and caring owner. But I suppose canaries would have a better chance of living in the wild if they
Yeah,
had to do without
yeah,
their
but we
pet
don't
owner.
we don't live in the wild is the thing, and so
But
you
we have to
know.
breed ourselves. If
Yeah,
we
well, we
care
do.
about our tribe, nation, and
Society
country,
finches breed. Society finches breed. That doesn't stop them from breeding. They're not going extinct.
well, yes, neither are people becoming extinct, even though, there's this anxiety about low birth rates. But you can work out through, different cultures and different empires, which countries are better organized. It is always the countries that practice monogamy that are most stable. And yes, monogamy is boring.
And nobody wants to do it, and nobody actually does it because they all cheat on their spouses.
Fine. So they can cheat on their spouses, but if they get found out, then they'll have to pay the consequences. That's fair enough, isn't it?
Well, you just want something where you don't have to go around punishing people for their,
Yeah, I mean, once a system is adopted, established, and stabilized, then you'll get, the majority of people, thinking, "Wow, this is great. Let's carry on with it." Because the alternative is, you know, what Westerners suffered in the first quarter of the century, of the 21st century. It's like, what else we're going to do? We're going to just not correct ourselves. I mean, we know what the problem is. The West is full of immigrants because, I guess there's not enough people, not enough white people to join the workforce. And then there's going to be all kinds of new things that's going to upset the balance, because the AI will make a lot of people redundant, and it's not just sort of unskilled manual labor. It's us, right? Judges, lawyers, writers, artists, musicians. So we will have to be, well, rational and honest in thinking these things through. Are you familiar with the falling rate of profit?
No.
Well, I'm not. I'm actually. It's a Marxist idea, but I think it's something to do with you need workers to. You basically need people to make products, to pay to become the consumers of those products, because if you have very few people, suppliers won't make any profit, and people who want to buy the stuff can't afford to buy it, and then there will be poverty and unemployment, and then revolution and disorder. I haven't completely understood it myself, so I'll have to look it up again, and maybe next time we can do it. We can talk about it. But I'm saying, we've got so many things, so many spanners being thrown into the mechanics of our political system that, I do think we need to think about these things soberly and honestly, and, discuss a problem with a view to, well, not just grifting.
Wait, what was that video that you sent me like right before we got on here? That was with the white man rapping? You said some white man dressed in rap clothes and he was rapping. Was that it?
Yeah. Did you watch it?
No, who was rapping?
It was those white men rapping, and I found it really. Shall I play it now?
Sure.
Gosh, I don't think I'm using. I'll try to do it, but maybe I can't. But it's basically, I don't know. I just don't think it's cool, and I don't think it's cool when you see mature men rapping. I mean, I don't think it is easy to rap. I mean, I actually have tried karaoke rapping, and it's not that easy.
No,
So
it's not.
I'm admitting there is some skill involved. Oh, what did you say? I didn't quite catch that.
No, play the thing.
Well, I'm using Firefox, and I may not be able to play it, but I'll try. I mean, I may not be able to play it without closing the stream. But anyway, I'll try. Share screen. Oh, perhaps I can. Select window screen, or maybe I'm not able to.
It's with Paul Vanderklay is there? Is that who it's with?
Yeah, that's him. I don't think I can do. I don't think I can do that. Oh, select. Oh gosh, I don't think I can. Maybe I can. No, I think it's. I would have to close the stream and start on Chrome. If you're prepared to do it, I'll do it.
We have to restart the stream?
I have to and start a new one on Chrome because I'm using Firefox, which for some reason won't allow me to share screen.
Well, then why don't we take a break and we'll pick up in a little bit?
Alrighty.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.